Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're on lesson 9 of module 2, and we are continuing to practice what we did for lesson 8. So we're going to add or subtract fractions with different denominators by creating the same denominators, but they're going to be not relatable. So we'll probably have to use finding those least common denominators using our least common multiples. Lots of math vocabulary tonight. Okay, so I'm going to get started on mine. And before I get started, I'm just reminding myself of my steps. So I'm going to set up my problem vertically. Remember, vertically is up and down. I'm going to use a strategy for common denominators. Then I'm going to add or subtract. I'm going to make proper fractions, which are fractions that are less than 1. And then I'm going to simplify if I know how. So, step 1 of this problem is 9/10 subtract 4/6. So I'm going to set it up vertically. Okay, step 2 is I see that they have different denominators, so I'm going to make them the same. So I first am going to say, can 6 fit into 10 perfectly, which is a no. So I know I'm going to need to use the least common multiple. So I can list my multiples for 6 and 10. I always like to start with the smallest one. So 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24, 6 times 5 is 30. And I found it because I know my multiplication table is for 10. So 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, and 10 times 3 is 30. So 30 is my least common multiple, which is going to be my least common denominator. Remember, we said it's kind of a bad habit to just multiply these. It would work, but then we're going to be dealing with larger numbers than we need to. Okay, so how did 10 turn into 30? Well, it was multiplied by 3. So I need to multiply the whole fraction by 3/3 so I don't change the value, because 3/3 is the same as 1. So if I multiply 9/10 by 1, it doesn't change the value. It just changes the way it looks. So 9 times 3 is 27. Okay, how did 6 turn into 30? Well, by multiplying it by 5. So I can multiply this whole fraction by 5 over 5, which is equal to 1. So 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, step 3 is add or subtract. So 27 take away 20 is 7/30. Step 4 is make sure it is a proper fraction or less than 1, which it is. And step 5 is simplify, which I cannot do. So my answer would be I changed it to 27/30, subtract 20/30, and my correct answer is 7/30. Okay, number 2 is 5/6 add 3/8. Okay, step 2 is they are different denominators, so I need to make them the same. And 6 cannot fit into 8, so I can't use my shortcut one. So I'm going to come down here and find what are my common denominators. So I always like to start with my smaller ones. So 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24, and that's going to be it because I know my 8s. So 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and 8 times 3 is 24. And if you are at a point where you see that, friends, you can do that. So again, I did not multiply these because I would have ended up with 48. I want the smallest one to deal with. The smallest, the least common one. Okay, so how did 6 turn into 24? What did I need to multiply it by? By 4. So I'm going to multiply the whole fraction by 4/5, which gives me 20 and 4/5. I'm going to multiply what? 8 by what? Would be 3, because 8 times 3 is 24, so 3 times 3 is 9. And it's always important that you have fractions that are equal to 1 that you're multiplying. Okay, so step 3 is let's add now. 20 plus 9 is 20/4. And because this is a fraction that's greater than 1, I want to make it a fraction that's less than 1. I want to make it proper. So 29/4 is the same as 29 divided by 24, which gives me 1 and 5/24, because my denominators need to stay the same. And that cannot be simplified, so that is my answer. So 5/6 was 20/24, plus 3/8 was 9/24, and my answer was 29/24, which is equivalent to 1 and 5/24. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's try some of these together. So here is our page. Okay, number 1 is 1/4 plus 1/6. So what are our steps? Let's come over here really small and try to write them. Number 1 is we're going to set it up vertically. Number 2, we're going to make common denominators. Number 3, we're going to add or subtract whatever our problem tells us. Number 5, we want fractions that are less than 1. We want fractions that are less than 1. And number 5 is we want to simplify if we can. And simplify just means make it an equivalent fraction with smaller numbers. Okay, so ready? 1/4 plus 1/6. Okay, well, these are not common, and the smallest one does not fit into the large one, perfect. So we need to come up with our common denominators. I'm sorry, our common multiples. So what are our multiples for 4 and 6? Well, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, and I think we just found it, because 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 times 2 is 12. So 12 is going to be our least common multiple or least common denominator. Okay, so 4 times what equaled 12? Well, that was 3. So we need to multiply the whole fraction by 3/3 to keep the value the same. So 1/4 is the same value as 3/12. Okay, what happened to 6 to turn into 12? Well, we multiplied it by 2. So we're going to multiply the 1 by 2. So that means we didn't change the value at all. We just changed the way it looked. Okay, so now we have 3 plus 2 is 5/12. Okay, that is not an improper fraction or greater than 1 fraction, so it's fine, and we cannot simplify it. So our answer is 5/12. Okay, we are going to skip number 2 and go to number 3. We're going to skip to number 3. Okay, so we have 4/5 take away 2/7. Okay, so I set it up vertically. I see the denominators are different, and the small one does not fit perfectly into the big one. So I'm going to think about what is going to be my least common multiple or least common denominator. So 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3, 5 times 4, 5 times 5, 5 times 6, 5 times 7. Oh, and that looks familiar because I know that's a multiple of 7, because I know my 7's really good, because 7 times 1, 7 times 2, 7 times 3, 7 times 4, and 7 times 5. Okay, and yes, this time if I multiplied them together, I would get that, but I won't always, so that's not a good habit. Okay, so we know 35 is going to be our least common denominator. So we're going to set up our problem like that and then say, what did we multiply 5 by to get to that? And it should be 7/7, because 5 times 7 is 35, so 4 times 7 is 28. So again, this is the same value as this. I'm just taking the pieces and cutting them up smaller. Okay, what happened to 7 to turn in there? It would be multiplied by 5. So I'm going to multiply this one by 5 to keep the value the same. So this is the same value as that, it just looks different. Okay, now we can do our problem. So 28 take away 10 is 18/35. And this fraction is less than 1 already, so we don't need to change it. And that fraction also can't be simplified. So that is our answer, 18/35. Okay, when you go to do it tonight, there might not be enough room here for you, so take space and use it. Do not worry about the extras that they're doing. You do your work, and I'm just going to be looking for your answers and the work as we've been doing it together. Have a great night, guys.